go ahead now and actually take a look at all the 10 cars on track here. So let's have a listen. All right, so those are all 10 cars. I just saw your message there, Sven, about not getting audio, and you say that you can hear it now, so that's good. I think I solved the issue here on my end, but thanks for letting me know, because I totally would have just kept going and not known at all. So yeah, guys, let me know if there's some audio issues or anything like that, you don't hear me properly. Let me know in the chat, because I am monitoring some things here, but I've got a lot of tabs open and different things to look at. So sometimes I might miss your chats, or I might miss just some technical issues here and there. Hopefully we're all set to go. So you guys didn't miss too much there of my little spiel. I didn't get into any of the details or the rundown just yet, so it's we're good. nothing lost too much at the moment. 2 hours 23 minutes left in this current session. We're going to start with doing the current driver lineup of the drivers in this session at the moment. Of course, some drivers, actually the only team really that has only one driver today is Red Bull. Max Verstappen is doing the full day today, and then Sergio Perez will be in the car tomorrow. But Max actually didn't do too much of a break. Shortly after the AM session ended, he was back out on track very quickly and in quick succession, so he doesn't mind obviously being out on track, which is not surprising. So let's do the quick rundown here of the drivers participating in the PM session. So with the aforementioned Max Verstappen back in it for the RB19. Charles Leclerc of Ferrari is in for the car in this afternoon in place of Carlos Sainz. Lewis Hamilton is in for Mercedes, of course taking over for George Russell. Esteban Ocon for the Alpine. Norris takes over for McLaren and Alfa Romeo. Valtteri Bottas is in the car this afternoon, and making his debut for Aston Martin, Fernando Alonso in the car this afternoon. Kevin Magnussen for Haas is driving. Nick De Vries making his AlphaTauri debut, driving for them this PM session, and also making his debut, one of 3 rookies this season, Logan Sargent for Williams, who is in place of Alex Albon, who drove this morning and had a very solid session, I must say. And we can just touch on the morning session just a little bit. It wasn't too eventful, actually, which was good for these 10 teams who were driving. But in other words, there wasn't anything to look out for. We had only one technical issue. Felipe Drugovich for Aston Martin had some electrical issue that made him stop out on track shortly after the session started. But it wasn't major. He got out afterwards, completed, let's see, he did 40 laps in as well, and put in a solid time, finishing P7 at the end of the session. But quickest in the AM session was Max Verstappen with the 1:32.9, completing 71 laps. But I think highlight, maybe let's say the winner of that session, or the most kind of noteworthy of that session, was the Williams of Alexander Albon in P3 there, 1:33.6, 7/10 off of Max Verstappen's best time, and he completed 74 total laps, which was the most of any driver in that AM session. And you look at some of the other debutants there, Oscar Piastri for McLaren completing 52 laps for his team in McLaren, and then also Nico Hülkenberg for Haas completing 51 laps as well. So that was just some of the highlights there from the morning session. Again, like I said, it wasn't too eventful. We didn't have any major issues or stoppages or anything like that. A very smooth day one of testing indeed, which was nice. So before we look at the current leaderboard, cars have been out on track now for about an hour or so. Let's look at Lewis Hamilton driving for the first time today, exiting the garage. So that was not too long ago. Lewis Hamilton is out on the track, and he is making his 2023 debut for there. I'm just trying to read some of your chats here from Sven, of course. Good afternoon to you, Sven. I saw you in the morning. Good to have you back here. He says, most other teams' side pods now look very similar from the Red Bull car, to the Red Bull car, you mean? Yeah, absolutely. And I was reading just a little bit about that, of how so many of these teams have seen an influence from Red Bull. We saw Williams kind of go to that direction. Obviously, Aston Martin already started last season. And you can kind of see it here on the tweet on the left-hand side of your screen there, especially the picture on the bottom right-hand corner. Let's see if I can make this a little bit bigger. Hopefully it's not going to slow it down too much. But you can see the Red Bull influence. Teams like Aston Martin and other teams as well have gone toward this direction, which is pretty interesting, because I would probably say that the one design concept that no team has really copied or gone with since then is the Mercedes concept, which is the zero pod, or how a podless car that you want to call it. And yet they stuck with that idea for this season. Maybe not as dramatic as it was last year, but they certainly have maintained that concept, that they didn't try to go the direction of Ferrari or Red Bull, for example. So it makes total sense, though, when you look at it. I mean, Red Bull dominated last year. So they definitely found something with these new rule changes, and a lot of these teams are looking to copy that as well. So I think that you're going to see that throughout the year. But if you look at the RB19, for example, this season, not too many changes. Just slight little evolutions with the design concept, but it's not dramatically different than what we're seeing. And this I actually bookmarked too. I'll bring your guys' attention to this. This is from the morning session. It's coming from Amus, which is a German publication. They do some pretty good work. And it's a comparison with the 2022 qualifying in Bahrain, and just to kind of get a sense of the speed. And here, I'll pull up another tweet here, which might be visually a little bit easier to read. And now this is a speed comparison in terms of kilometers per hour, of course. And let's see, hopefully I had saved it. Here we go. Yes, the top speed during the morning session. So Red Bull led the way at 326 kilometers an hour top speed. Then you had Ferrari at 325, Williams 322, AlphaTauri 322, McLaren 322 as well. And a lot of comments they're making of teams such as Aston Martin, for example. They improved their straight line capabilities. If you remember last year, they had a pretty heavy car, and they weren't very, very quick in the straight line, and they've really done a lot to improve that. So almost every team has been increasing their straight line speed, which is interesting to see. So just kind of an interesting note there for that morning session. So let's do a quick rundown then of the times that we have so far. And I'm just trying to see if I can pause it on something that's not a video. So currently out on track, we got Lewis Hamilton in the Mercedes, the W14. Logan Sargent, the rookie, is also out on track as well. We got Hamilton going through turn 11 at the moment. He is sitting P3. Max Verstappen still has the fastest time of the day so far, but Hamilton posting up a pretty good time so far. Has only been on track for about an hour or so into this session, and posting a solid time as well. Fernando Alonso in the Aston Martin putting in a time worthy of 6th place. And that's been a slight change there as well. Charles Leclerc in the Ferrari up into 8th, and Hülkenberg and Bottas rounding out the top 10. And now let's take a look at what tires these drivers are currently running at the moment. Humidity up at 31% there in Bahrain. We're going to get a look at the track temperature in just a minute, just to see where it was at. It was around 43 the last time that we left the stream in the AM session. It was climbing by about 2 degrees. Air temperature 25 degrees Celsius, so track temp 31 degrees Celsius at the moment, which is not surprising. If you guys are watching the action on your end there, you're probably seeing that the sun is going down, so track temperature is coming down as well as the air temperature, and we're almost into the night session as well, so we're going to see cooler temperatures at the moment, much different from what we had in the AM session. And we saw a lot of drivers in the AM session doing a lot of aero testing and a lot of FlowViz paint that we saw on the cars, and I'm probably not going to see as much of that at this session, and we might see some soft tire runs hopefully by the time that we get to nightfall there in Bahrain. Should be in about an hour and a half's time. Hey, morning to you, Greg. He says, good morning from Lloydminster, Alberta. Good to have some Canadian content here in the chat. Great to have you along. And currently 9:15 a.m. Eastern Time in Canada. So yeah, if you guys wherever you're watching from, please do leave a chat there. And I know Sven watching from the Netherlands, and we had a couple viewers from India this morning and all across the world. So very cool to have so many of you joining us along, and hopefully we'll get some more people into the chat soon. And please leave your questions and comments. We can kind of take this stream and conversation into any which direction. We're obviously going to be watching the live action as we go, but we can talk about many other different things, F1 related, of course, in the meantime. So just to give you guys an idea, my F1 TV stream is at 2 hours, 14 minutes, 33 seconds, 32 seconds, 31 seconds. So you kind of see there is a slight delay here and there, but it's not too bad. So the time is just a little bit off, as you can see on the session time in the middle of the screen, but it's not too bad. It's all right for now. So Max Verstappen currently out on track at the moment as well. He's about to start a flying lap, currently sitting P1. He's completed 107 laps so far today in total. He is, of course, doing both sessions, so he will be leading the lap count in terms of the drivers for today. But good to see drivers like Hamilton already up to 26 laps. Fernando Alonso's done 15. Charles Leclerc, 29 laps so far in this PM session, as well as Valtteri Bottas, who's clocked in 29 laps so far. And Kevin Magnussen in the Haas as well, 21 laps. Logan Sargent, 30 laps. Nick de Vries, 31 laps. Lando Norris, only 5 laps so far. I'm going to maybe try and see and find out what's going on with McLaren and what is the delay in getting Norris out on track. Only 5 laps done so far. I don't think that is a targeted run plan. I think they have some sort of issue that they're going there. But Verstappen currently flying at the moment. Purple sector 1. 29.4 in the first sector. We're going to stay with his lap here for a moment, and then we're going to just take a look at this AlphaTauri exiting the garage. And as we mentioned, we talked about this in the AM stream too. It's very kind of obvious, and you'll hear everybody talk about this, that you can't really read into the times of winter testing as well. We don't know so many factors, ERS modes, fuel loads, different things like that, track conditions, all variables that we have to take into account. But you can always just tell about how quickly and how early a driver can push, how they're looking out on track. This lap is a little bit rough here from Verstappen as he kind of exits wide there out of turn 15 and had a couple of scruffy moments there. Lost quite a bit of time there in sector 3. Still goes quickest of the day so far with a 1:32.8, and that is on the C3 tire by the looks of it. Yes, it is that yellow sidewall tire. We will do another tire review in just a moment. But Verstappen's looking good, and he's one of the best drivers at this, quickly out of the box, whether it's the first lap of the weekend or the first lap of the year. He's really good at getting tires up to temperature, getting comfortable with the car, and being able to put in a solid lap right away. So he looks quick, he looks comfortable already, and bar none, this kind of scruffy lap here as we're seeing the replay, just I think outbroke himself a little bit there into turn 4, and then had a little bit of an understeer moment, or excuse me, an oversteer moment on the exit of 4, made him run wide, but still went quickest there. Still managed to somehow find more time actually in sector 2. So a good lap there from Verstappen, but we're probably going to see more from him and the others as well. Yeah, really wide there on 15. I don't know, do they count track limits in testing? I don't think they do, but that definitely would have gotten deleted. And we see a replay here, Esteban Ocon locking up into turn 10 in his Alpine A523. We will talk about this track in just a moment. Turn 10 is one that you have to know for sure that he is a very tricky track. And just keeping up with the chats here, guys, on my phone. Greg Nolan says Norris had a crash this morning. No, Norris was not in the car this morning. It was Piastri, so they're splitting days. So he definitely did not have a crash this morning. I will actually find out what the reason is for Norris only completing 5 laps so far. In the meantime, we can play this video of Nick de Vries getting out onto the track for the first time in his AlphaTauri career. First F1 testing as well for him. So have a listen. So that was Nick DeVries getting out onto the track earlier. He is currently out on track at the moment, as well as Fernando Alonso for Aston Martin making his debut for the Silverstone team. I'm excited to see Fernando Alonso this season at McLaren, or excuse me, at McLaren. He's been on too many teams. It's hard to keep track of. I'm excited to see Fernando Alonso at Aston Martin this season. I think it should be really, really interesting. Not just the partnership with Lance Stroll, but also just how far Aston Martin can go this season. They look good in their preseason. They said all the right things. The car looks good. The new technical team that they have in place in Silverstone is very, very good. And as well as the new factory that's coming down the pipeline with the new wind tunnel. Things are looking good, but it's up to them to live up to the hype. They've certainly fallen short ever since they've taken over Racing Point in 2019, or excuse me, in 2020 and rebranded the team. But it's big things now with a guy like Fernando Alonso in your team. So yeah, we'll see what happens. But yeah, nothing from McLaren, guys. I'm not sure. Just to answer your question there, Greg. Not sure exactly what the reasoning is here. But they just have Lando, of course. He was getting suited and booted just at the top of the hour, getting ready for the session. But since then, he hasn't gone out on track. But if you guys are McLaren fans and Lando Norris fans in particular, why don't we play a little bit of the MCL 60 out on track during the filming day? This was on Tuesday, I believe. McLaren got out earlier, so let's have a listen. So that was the MCL 60 out on track earlier, and hopefully we're going to see it shortly with Lando Norris getting out on track. Still not sure what the issue is there. I'm just going to try and comb through my Twitter feed here to see what they're saying. Aha, perfect. Perfect timing. Ask it, you shall receive. This comes from Albert Fabrega, who is, I believe, a Spanish journalist, but yeah, he is in the pit lane reporting live. He says McLaren stopped in the garage. Mechanics repairing the brake cooling intake connection to front wheel deflector. So there's some cracks in it that they are currently repairing, which is the reason why Lando Norris has only completed 5 laps so far, and we haven't seen him since the first hour of this session. So Lando Norris fans and McLaren fans, you'll have to wait a little bit longer. It doesn't seem like a major issue, but certainly not an issue that you want to have with such limited running this year with testing. Only 3 days this year, and not off to such a good start there for Norris and McLaren. Remember the brake issues they had last year in 2022 during the second week in Bahrain. Testing was quite major, which really hampered the start of their season. So let's hope they can figure that out. But getting back to some of your chats here, Sven says, I'm sure Red Bull found a way to reduce drag whilst retaining the downforce the car generated last year. Yeah, absolutely. I think so. And I think that they found some top speed just a little bit. And the also important thing to note is that I was reading this morning that Helmut Marko had said that Red Bull is under the weight limit at the moment versus last year at this time during testing, they were 20 kilos overweight, which was obviously not good for your drag. So I think that that's a big issue that they've been able to get a hold of. We've seen a lot of this. We talked about this in the morning about teams shedding weight by going to just the carbon look of the cars instead of painting it. And you do save a few grams of paint when you just leave the carbon fiber the way it is. So a lot of these teams you can see with the liveries are much more black exposed there. So yeah, I think for that. And also another one from Sven, he says, we are getting spoiled this year. 2 Dutchies. Yeah, it's great for you guys. It's actually been a while. I don't even know if there's ever been 2 Dutch drivers on the grid at the same time. I'd have to maybe look into that, but I don't think that it's ever happened really, because Holland in general hasn't had too many Formula One drivers in its history. I mean, obviously, off the top of my head, I can think of Jos Verstappen, Robert Dornbusch, and other than that, I mean, Arie Luyendyk, which is a lot. Although I think Luyendyk drove in Formula One. I know he drove an IndyCar, but I don't think that you guys have ever had 2 Dutch drivers on the grid at one time. So yeah, this must be nice for you guys. I mean, for the Canadian side of things, they had Lucas Latifi and Lance Stroll the last couple of years, which was kind of a big deal for Canada because typically they never really had a Formula One driver, and then all of a sudden they had 2. So it's good for you guys. And Dutch Grand Prix is going to be really cool for Nick de Vries again this year, which will be nice. And reading this comment from Serham, who says, hopefully pronouncing that correctly, he says, in my opinion, most of the teams did not use too much wing for top speed, except for Red Bull and Ferrari, which explains the lap time gaps. I hope mid-teams bring some progress. I hope so too. I was really disappointed last year with the gap from the midfield into the top three because it was way, way, way too big. The last few seasons, it was kind of coming down. I mean, we had seen the gaps get just a little bit smaller, and some of the midfield teams were able to win a race here and there, were able to get a podium. And then last season, it just blew up the gap between the top three and the rest of the teams. And we saw only one team, McLaren, be able to score a podium all year long. So I really do hope that they made some progress this year. And a lot of these teams, for example, like McLaren and Aston Martin, they have facility upgrades that are in the works. Like McLaren has a new wind tunnel that's supposed to be coming on the way. They're currently using the one from Toyota in Germany. Aston Martin, as I mentioned before, they have their new wind tunnel that should be finished next season, and their whole new factory campus that should be done in a few months' time. So hopefully with that in mind, they'll be able to challenge more. This year, maybe not, but hopefully from 2024 onwards, we might get to see them challenging for the front. But then again, it's almost kind of hard to see that happening just because by the time we reach 2024, 2025, imagine the gains that the likes of Red Bull, Ferrari, and Mercedes have made. The question is, will that gap be too much for these smaller teams to make up? I hope not, but we'll see what happens because that was kind of what we were hoping with these new regulation changes is we'd get a closer formula, but it's kind of typical of this sport's history. They don't really always bring everything closer, and we always have these gaps in some of these smaller teams, which is unfortunate. It'd be nice to have at least 4 or 5 teams, let's say, fighting for the championship. And it was kind of like that in 2010, if you remember, the year after that big regulation change. They had these, how many teams were fighting for that championship? You had McLaren, you had Ferrari, Red Bull, and I might be missing another team. I can't remember, but you had about 3 teams fighting for the championship, about 5 or 6 drivers that were in with a chance of winning the championship. So we want to kind of see something more like that this season and going on for the rest of this decade. So, yep, I'm hoping as well that the new smaller teams will be able to get in the fight. So currently, no major updates out on track at the moment yet. Nothing significant in the leaderboard change. We still got Verstappen, Sainz, and Hamilton rounding out our top 3. And Logan Sargent moved up just a little bit there. He's up into P60 with one of his latest laps. And it looks like Lando Norris, his issues are all resolved. They've got the tire blankets on. Engine is being fired up, so it looks like we will see Lando Norris back out on track again. He's only completed 5 laps so far because of a brake issue. They had some sort of a crack on one of the parts of the cylinder there, so they just had to get that repaired, and he's going to be out on track in just a moment's time. So McLaren fans will finally be able to see Lando Norris. He had his teammate Oscar Piastri was in the car earlier this morning. He set a time that's quick enough for 15th place. Of course, the time is kind of irrelevant, really. Morning session versus the afternoon session now. It's kind of hard to compare. So keep that in mind. But Lando Norris back out on track, which is a good sign to see. And we have, you can see here the different cars. We finally got to see all the cars as well. And we see the top 5 teams here: Red Bull, Ferrari, Mercedes, Alpine, and McLaren. And we can see the rest of the teams here as well from 6 to 10 last year. Alfa Romeo, Aston Martin, Haas, AlphaTauri, and Williams. So let me know, guys, what is your favorite livery of 2023? I'm curious to know which car do you like the most. But again, you can kind of see the theme here. A lot of visible carbon from these teams. And if you're like Mercedes, for example, you just decided to go back to the black altogether. And it's mainly for performance games. It does look good on the Mercedes and the Alfa Romeo, for example. I think the Haas livery is one of my favorites, but a lot of it is with weight saving in mind. So we'll see if in the next coming seasons whether this is going to remain or not. But Nick De Vries currently on a hot lap at the moment. De Vries making his AlphaTauri debut today, the first official session. Of course, not his Formula One debut because he did have a one-off outing with Williams last season that really launched his Formula One career. I mean, he had some chances to possibly get a seat in the past years, especially after he became Formula 2 champion, but we know that it was favored to go to a driver like Latifi, who had more financial backing. But now De Vries finally gets his chance, and he's a lot more experienced now. He's a lot older as well, so he's a rookie in a sense, but not a rookie in terms of racing. Formula E champion now, Formula 2 champion. He's raced in many, many different types of categories, World Endurance Championship as well. So AlphaTauri are getting a very, very accomplished and very mature driver, and that'll be good for his teammate Yuki Tsunoda as well. I think that Tsunoda, hopefully entering his third season now with AlphaTauri, will be able to really get stuck in this year because I think he's on the hot seat for 2023. And Red Bull, we know they are not shy in changing drivers. And if he doesn't show anything, then he might get the boot. And I think somebody in the morning chat suggested Liam Lawson, which is definitely a possibility. But who knows who else could be out on the market, maybe coming up from F2 or from elsewhere as well. We know Mick Schumacher is available, Daniel Ricciardo, if you'd like to make a return. You never know. So we'll see what happens. But good to see Lando Norris now out on track in the McLaren. He's on the one of the hardest compounds here, the C1, that hard tire, which is the white side mall marking. There's 7 compounds available, actually, 7 hard tire compounds available, which we can talk about in just a moment. And a couple of them are actually prototype tires. I see some new chats coming in here as well. Greg again asked, any updates on Lance? Yeah, actually, this afternoon I read a tweet from, I believe it was from Chris Medland, who said the update on Lance Stroll is that Aston Martin said it was some sort of a hand and a wrist injury, but they're not going to go into any more details. And they say that he's okay, but that they didn't want to risk it by putting him in the car for testing. But they have not made a decision yet as to whether he will race in a week's time for the Bahrain Grand Prix. So as it stands, Lance Stroll, he is okay. He injured his hand, injured his wrist, something like that, upper body. And his status for the first race of the season is yet to be confirmed. They do have Felipe Drugovich on standby, their reserve driver. He was in the car this morning. But they also have Stoffel Van Dorn, who's another one of their reserve drivers who might actually be driving if Lance Stroll is not ready to go. Van Dorn is not here this weekend because he is driving in Formula E, but he would be available for next weekend's race. But that is all to be determined. We don't even know whether Drugovich, for example, will be driving at all tomorrow or on Saturday. Aston Martin has yet to confirm their schedule, so it might just be Alonso for the next 2 days, but we'll see. We hope Lance Stroll gets well soon, but man, I got to tell you, I think Formula One drivers just have to stop cycling in the preseason, because we saw it was with Fernando. It happened, I think, in 2021. His was a lot more serious, though, because he had to actually get some jaw surgery, and luckily he was able to start the season. But, I mean, as you guys know, those things can be very, very dangerous, and, one wrong step, and he might not even be driving at all this season. So I kind of feel like F1 drivers need to either, cycle somewhere that's a lot safer, there's no cars around, or just do the stationary bike. No risk in getting yourself hurt on the stationary bike. So we've seen too many drivers get injured in the past. So yeah, hopefully Stroll will be here next week driving for Aston Martin. Now they're just doing on F1 Live here, taking a closer look at some of the Mercedes bodywork on the front wing in the garage, and you can kind of see this tweet here from Albert. The shape of the Mercedes side pods is different to all others, and I mean, it's so obvious. It's just so evident how much different it is, especially when you compare it to the likes of Ferrari and Red Bull. They've really been the only team to kind of maintain this zero pod or slim side pod concept, and they think there's potential in it. They said last year the zero side pod concept wasn't really the issue as to why the W13 was struggling so much. So hopefully they've understood what those other issues were and that they can unlock the potential of that. I know that a lot of Mercedes fans were quite excited about the W14, seeing it out on track, and they have some pretty good feelings about the car, but we'll see, of course. They have quite a pretty big gap to make up from last season, although they did finish 2022 a lot stronger than they did when they started the season. So we'll see. We'll see where Mercedes might end up. We don't have to wait long. it's not just about seeing the timings in testing. It's also the fact that the first race of the year is next week. So that's when all of this speculation and, figuring out who's where is going to be ended, because we'll be able to see for sure once qualifying and the race finishes. So we just hit under the 2-hour mark here on day one of the PM session of 2023 F1 winter testing. Thank you, everybody in the chat. Thank you, everybody who's watching, wherever you are watching around the world. Of course, live chat is wide open. Ask as many questions as you want, guys. I am, of course, alone today. I will be getting to the schedule a little bit later on for our other streams. So because I am alone, it is obviously a lot harder to just talk by yourself. So it helps keep the conversation and the flow going smoothly if you guys ask questions or comments, because then we can kind of jump from one topic to the next and keep things going. Just as a reference here, I will tell you guys that my F1 live stream or F1 TV feed is around the 1 minute 53, 56, 55, 54 mark, just to kind of give you guys an idea of where we are in that regard. It's going to be hard to kind of line up exactly where it is, so it's going to be a slight delay. Of course, there's a delay even on the stream, but that's okay. We're just along for the ride, kind of almost like a podcast in a way, a live podcast that we're doing. Yeah, just following up here with what Greg was saying in the chat. He's saying, I read that Lance was seen with a cast on his arm. Yeah, I didn't see that, but I wouldn't be surprised. Yeah, that's what Aston, I think it came from Mike Crack officially, the Aston Martin team principal, where he said that it was a hand or a wrist injury. They didn't, I don't know, it was weird because they didn't say at first what it was, and people were obviously speculating, but I think that's all that they've kind of really given us. They said that it was some sort of hand wrist injury, which is going to make it very difficult for him to drive. So yeah, if we get any further updates, we'll let you guys know for sure. So after early brake issues for Lando Norris, he's currently out on track. He's sitting P18 at the moment. He's doing some longer runs now, higher fuel, I expect, because he's 4.2 seconds off the gap of Max Verstappen's best time of a 1:32.8. And as you guys can see, the current tire situation at the moment, drivers that are out on track, we've got Verstappen through to Hamilton out on the medium tire. Alex Albon, of course, who wasn't in this session, is not relevant. Neither is Guan Yu Zhou. Alonso, let's see, who else do we have here? De Vries, he is on the medium tire. And we've got Kevin Magnussen on the medium. So all drivers except for Lando Norris are running the medium tire. Now, we do have the 7 compounds as well, and it goes from C0, which is a new tire for this season, all the way up until C5. But you do have some differences, because you will see that the C1, for example, has none of the stripes, so as the little brackets that they call it. So if you see one like that doesn't have any brackets, that's the C1, and then it goes further and further. I'll try and find actually the graphic here from Pirelli, because it's easier to visualize than me just telling you guys. It might be really confusing. But there are 7 dry compounds available, and certainly through in the morning session, for example, Nico Hülkenberg was doing a lot of different runs on the prototype tire, the Pirelli prototype tires that he was doing, which is why he didn't necessarily have the quickest time or the most potential because of that. So we're just going to wait for this to load. Okay, we got another chat here coming in from Deal Brick, hopefully saying that right. Which rookie do you think will perform the best? That is a good question. I honestly think the rookie that will perform the best will be Nick De Vries. And the reason being because although you can classify him as a rookie, he just has so much racing experience. He has a lot of really good knowledge, very mature driver as well, very professional, a champion in other categories as well. So I think he's going to be the most impressive rookie of 2023. I wouldn't be surprised if he absolutely destroys Yuki Tsunoda in the AlphaTauri. Not saying that's what I think is going to happen, but I think that he's going to be the most impressive. He's going to be the most measured out of any of the rookies. I'm sure he'll have his mistakes like every rookie will, but to me, he's probably one of the more prepared Formula One rookies we've seen in recent years. Now, somebody like Piastri, for example, I mean, considering the hype around him and all the things that people are saying, he could end up being the best or the most surprising rookie with some of his results that he's capable of. But I just think overall with DeVries, he's probably going to be the most impressive for me, in my opinion. But it should be interesting to see what happens. And yeah, we definitely have some Greg and Christopher as well agreeing that DeVries will be the most impressive rookie as well. So yeah, it's a good rookie class this year, and I'm interested for Logan Sargent as well. First American driver, full-time driver since 2008, and I'm curious to see how he gets on. He was kind of really sped into Formula One, had some decent numbers in Formula Two. You know, a lot of speed, a lot of potential, but Formula One is just such a different level. So we'll see how he performs, and also Williams as well. Although I do think Williams is off to a good start in testing so far, but it's only been one day, so don't read too much into it. But those would be my picks for rookies. But let me know what you guys think in the chat. I'll get back to your comments and questions in just a moment. But here is the graphic that I was talking about. So you have a lot of different tire compounds at the disposal here. So you have the C0, which is that white tire. Then the C1 has the brackets. Moving on to the C2, the yellow tire doesn't have any brackets. The C3 has the brackets at the side. And then you see the C3 prototype tire as well. And then going on into the softest compounds, you have the C4, which has no brackets, and then the C5, which does have the brackets. I'm not sure if we're going to see the soft tire. It is pretty much almost nightfall now in Bahrain, but we might end up seeing a few soft tire runs toward the end of this session. But most drivers right now currently out on that C3 tire or the C2, and we see Lando Norris, who is currently out on track and on my screen, is on that C1 white tire, the harder compound. So he's doing probably quite a few Grand Prix runs and simulations here with that combination. But you never know. We don't know exactly what the fuel loads is. And another question here we got from Christopher, who says, do you think Yuki gets sacked mid-season if DeVries is crushing him? That's an excellent question. I think we talked about this a little bit in the AM stream. It's certainly a possibility. And Red Bull definitely not shy to do this. And I think that they probably would. Honestly, I do believe that if it's that bad, you know, like if by the middle of the season you have, I mean, depending on where AlphaTauri is, right? Obviously, if they can score points, race in and race out. But I would probably agree and say that they would go to sack him. But here's the issue: is I don't know who they would replace him with. I mean, would you put Daniel Ricciardo in that AlphaTauri, for example? Daniel Ricciardo is Red Bull's reserve driver this year. Would Daniel want to drive for the junior team and return to where his Formula One career almost began in a way? I don't know if he would do that. Probably not, because I think he's quite happy taking a year off of Formula One on the sidelines. So I don't know who the other options are. You have Liam Lawson, for example, but does AlphaTauri want to put in another young, slightly inexperienced driver there? I'm not sure, but the hot seat is on for Yuki Tsunoda, because if you remember back to testing in 2021, he impressed everybody. He was super quick. The first race of the season, he was no fear, scored points, overtaking guys left and right. And then after that, it just kind of really fell apart. And last season was better. He calmed down a lot, and he had a much more measured approach, but still it wasn't standing out to you in a way that you'd think like, oh, wow, this is the guy that we all thought that he would be. But a lot can change, and a lot obviously depends on the AlphaTauri car as well, which was interesting because I was reading, I didn't read the article, but I just saw the headline that Franz Tost was saying that after the 2022 Abu Dhabi Grand Prix, they obviously had the preseason test where a lot of these new drivers were able to get in their cars and to test out the 2022 car. And Franz Tost, team principal of AlphaTauri, was saying that Nick DeVries had a lot of complaints about that car. He said a lot of criticisms of that car last season. And Tost was saying that it actually helped them a lot. It kind of woke up the team a little bit. And that's just kind of what I'm talking about right there with DeVries, is not many rookies are going to step in the car for the first time and have those sort of comments and be able to not just identify the areas of concern, but also have the reputation and the respect to be able to demand changes like that. Because although he only has one Grand Prix worth of experience, he is a very accomplished driver. So just kind of interesting to see what a type of driver DeVries is and what he brings to this team. So yeah, the pressure is on for young Yuki Tsunoda, that is for sure. Okay, it's just scrolling through here. Dealbrick saying, I'm hoping Piastri can live up to the hype. Yeah, definitely. I think McLaren is hoping for that too. After all the contract drama, and essentially they essentially dropped Ricardo for that reason. Which I mean, I would agree because Ricardo was underperforming and they were losing a lot of points without having a second driver being able to score points consistently. So I think that definitely it was the right move to make, but considering what Oscar Piastri and his management team decided to do, getting that seat at McLaren, he's going to need to deliver now. And it'll be tough for him, though, because he hasn't raced in a while. He took the year off, which isn't ideal necessarily for drivers. So limited testing this year. And a lot of people are going to be looking at him in the beginning of the season. And then, of course, on top of everything, he has to go up against Lando Norris, who is driving exceptionally at the moment and is McLaren's franchise driver, one of the higher paid drivers in Formula One, young star, really the leader in that team. He's going to have a lot of pressure as well. But Piastri, I think, is more than capable. So, be on the lookout for him, that's for sure. Be on the lookout for this driver, too. One of my drivers to look out for in 2023, Fernando Alonso. This was a few minutes ago, just heading out on track. Man, it would be really nice to be there trackside. I really love being on these streams here with you guys, but I think you would all agree I'd much rather be trackside at the moment and at least being able to live stream for you guys or bring you some footage. But nonetheless, we enjoy where we are at the moment. An hour and 43 minutes left in the stream. I guess I didn't talk about the sort of the schedule for this stream. Of course, we're going to be live. I'm going to be live for most of the session, but I might be ending a little bit earlier because I will be doing a day one testing debrief show. It's going to be really short, probably no more than 20 to 30 minutes that I'll release as a video a little bit later on this afternoon, so pay attention to that. If you guys missed some of the AM action or if you missed some of the PM action, this will just be a short wrap-up show going through the times, the number of laps completed, and anything to highlight from that day. It's been a relatively quiet day in terms of testing. We haven't seen any major engine blowups or any crazy thing like that, but it'll be a little bit of a debrief show there. So I'm looking forward to that. I'm going to get to more of your chats in a moment. Keep them coming, guys. I really like the fact that the chat is going a lot more than it was this morning, so I'm glad to have, looks like we got about 47 or 50 of you currently watching right now, if my numbers are correct, so that's great. Hit that like button as well, share it, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already done so. I will let you know we are live for the next 2 days as well. Tomorrow there will be no AM stream, unfortunately. I have to get my other work done for that annoying part of my life. I wish this was my full-time job, but it's not there yet. So we're only going to be going live in the PM tomorrow. I should have a tentative schedule going live once again, 3 p.m. Central European Time, 9 a.m. Eastern Time. Shaker from the Backmarkers F1 Show podcast should be joining me. And also for the Canadian viewers out there, Tim Haraney from TSN Racing will be joining the podcast for a few short minutes just to give us his input. Tim is a former Canadian racing driver and, of course, has been on the podcast many times before. So I'm going to be looking forward to talking with him tomorrow. And then Friday, we got 2 streams again. AM stream starting at 4 a.m. Eastern Time and 10 a.m. Central European Time, and then the other session again at 3 p.m. And that one as well, we should have Tyler McDonald from the Backmarkers F1 Show podcast, Shaker as well joining us, and we've also got F1 Data Analysis from Twitter, who should be joining the stream. He does a lot of really great technical analyses, and he can really break down, he has a mechanical engineering background, so he's really good at kind of breaking down the technical aspects of testing, which will be really fun. So hopefully he will be coming on as well on Saturday. So Saturday will be a busy one, which I'm looking forward to. So yeah, full slate of schedule. Head to the homepage of the channel, and you'll find all of the upcoming streams and times. And as you see in the middle of your screen there as well, all of our social media, which we'll be posting all the links there. So looking forward to seeing you guys there, but plenty of time left in this one. Okay, let's dive into some more of your chats here, just so I can keep up with it. If I missed one, guys, just comment it again, but I will be scrolling back up again, so I'm going to get to every one of your comments here. Greg Nolan says, lap times and testing does give an impression on how well they will do this season. You only have to look at last year's testing. And that's absolutely right. I mean, lap times in testing, it isn't everything and it can be deceiving. But for example, Max Verstappen was quickest in 2022 testing, and we know how that went. So it's not a definitive answer, but it does give you a good estimation. And especially the lap times on day 3, for example. More so, we look at what tire compound they were on. If you see the team start running the soft tires, then you can kind of get an idea of where the pecking order is. But it's not a definitive answer, but we can read into them just a little bit. Dealbrick asks again, do you think Gasly can outperform Ocon and even get a podium this year? Great question, and good timing as well, as they're showing Esteban Ocon on screen right now, currently sitting in the Alpine garage. I think he's more than capable of outperforming Esteban Ocon, that's for sure. I think Pierre Gasly is a very, very good driver, and very curious how he will get on at his new team. And we obviously know the history between these two. They've had quite a few run-ins together when they were in their junior careers. They're not the best of friends, and they admit that. But I think that they're obviously more than professional enough to be able to work together. And I think that he's more than capable of beating him. Now, whether they could score a podium, I don't know. We'll see. Alpine didn't necessarily get close last season, and they said one of their stated goals in 2023 was to cut the gap to the front three. I don't know if they could do it. I think they're going to need a lot of luck this season. I know a lot of people have said some positive things about the A523, just seeing the car in the pit lane this morning. And as you see in the middle of your screen here on the left there on Twitter, Alpine are working on the setup of the rear axle. They moved from the pull to the pushrod configuration, so easier to work on setup changes. So I think Alpine are in a pretty good spot at the moment. They are underweight, apparently. Officially, they say they are 796 kilos. And of course, the weight limit being 798. I don't know if that's true. They might be a little bit lower, maybe a bit higher. We don't know. But I think Gasly definitely has the capabilities of outperforming Ocon. I think just personally, just based on history and just based on how Ocon usually gets on with some of his teammates, that'll be one to watch for sure. I think we're going to have a couple of run-ins between some of those guys this year. Yeah, Sven says, and miss out on Yuki's colorful comments. I hope not. Yeah, I mean, at least he gives us some good entertainment over the radio, but I do feel for his race engineers sometimes because, yeah, I mean, and that's typical, right? I mean, everybody that knows, I mean, even me, I'm learning a new language at the moment. The first things that you learn in a new language is how to swear. So, I mean, Sonoda is fluent in terms of swearing. So, yeah, I would miss that if we don't see Sonoda anymore on the grid. Sven also says Gasly versus Ocon could be interesting if Gasly likes the car. Yeah, absolutely. And we don't know if Gasly is going to like the car. I mean, remember the last time he went to a new team, he really couldn't get up to speed with the car. And yeah, that's the thing, right? Is you never know how these things go when you go to a new team. And totally different car, totally different concept. Pierre's also been with the Red Bull family his entire F1 career. This is a totally different team, brand new engine. So let's see how he gets on in the first couple of races. And Christopher says, I think Gasly won't do as well as Ocon this year, just being new to the team, while Ocon has been there. But it's going to be real fun to watch the teammate versus teammate battle between the two. That is a good point as well. And I didn't think of that, but definitely an excellent point. Ocon's been with the Enstone outfit, or the Renault/Alpine team, for 3 seasons now. This will be his 4th. So he's up to speed on everything, the procedures, the drivability of the Renault engine, and of course the car from last year. So, and you know, honestly, Ocon had an excellent 2022 campaign. Kind of flew under the radar, but his highest drivers' championship finished at 8th, and also became one of only 3 drivers to defeat Fernando Alonso over a season. And I know you can put the caveat in there that Alonso had a lot of reliability issues, missed out on a ton of points. That is true. And I do think that Alonso did drive better than Ocon last season. But regardless, a win is a win, and it goes down in the record books that way. So Ocon, I think, definitely had a much better season than he did in 2021. And I think being the new guy at the team, he'll have a little bit of an advantage there. Yeah, for sure. Yeah, just following up from you guys are having a good conversation here in the chat about Ocon and Ocon. You says Christopher says you could tell there was some tension between them at their car reveal. Yeah, I mean it's no real secret. They don't like each other. They don't get along. I mean, I think they get along okay, as well as you get along with a fellow coworker you don't really like that much. But they have to put those differences aside and to try and work together. But it's going to be hard. it is really going to be hard. And we've seen drivers who I wouldn't necessarily say they're friends, but teammates in the past who've had run-ins as well. But they're super competitive, ultra competitive. Two drivers like that, and yeah. So don't be surprised if we see some run-ins from the two of them. We saw it last year with even Alonso and Ocon. So I would be surprised if we don't see it here. Yeah, Sven says Drive to Survive will be pleased with the potential for the drama there. They definitely will be. And actually, speaking of Drive to Survive, they are releasing season 5 tomorrow. So, in addition to watching our streams tomorrow, if you guys have Netflix, you'll be watching the Drive to Survive, the new season. So, I don't know. Is anybody, in terms of the F1 fans out there, and I'm speaking about the longtime F1 fans, which I think most of you guys in the chat are. Maybe I'm not. Maybe let me know. Maybe you've been watching for only a year or two. I think a lot of the long-term F1 fans like myself, I'll watch Drive to Survive, but I won't really be that excited for it as I was in the first or second season, for example. So, I mean, I'll probably watch a few episodes this year, but I'm not as interested in it as I used to be in the beginning. I hope that they improve the quality of the product. I hope that there's less manufacturer drama, and I hope that it's just more real than what it's been in the last few seasons. They got Max Verstappen to get on camera this year, so they had to have changed something. Either that or they paid him a hell of a lot of money to show up on the streams or to show up on the series this year. So yeah, we'll see what the new season is like. And yeah, Christopher says, I do think Fernando beats Stroll and Ocon this year. I would agree. I definitely do think that he's going to beat Stroll. And Ocon, we'll see. I mean, Aston Martin was 7th in the Drivers' Championship Constructors' Championship last year versus Alpine, who was 4th. And it depends. You know, it depends of how much closer that they can get. I think in terms of like hype in the preseason, the launches and everything, Aston Martin looked really good. They said all the right things. The new technical team that they have behind them, I mean, keep in mind that their technical director is Dan Fallows, who is kind of a protege, or he worked under Adrian Newey at Red Bull. So, I mean, if there's one guy that you want to learn from in your F1 career, it's going to be Adrian Newey. So this is really, really positive for Aston Martin. And they think that this was kind of really the first car that this new technical team under Dan Fallows has really been influenced. So they're really, really excited about that and have a lot of good things to say. We'll find out really soon whether or not it's for real. But I just think that Alonso, a fresh start at at Aston Martin, he said a lot of kind of like subtle digs at his former teams like Alpine and McLaren, for example. And so I think, you know, Aston Martin, you think about the team, obviously used to be Racing Point, Force India. They've always operated really, really well. Been such a super small team. They've always overachieved. I think this is a really good place for Alonso. I think Alpine, with all due respect to Renault, the management has been all over the place. I mean, just look at the way they handled the Piastri situation, and just altogether, it hasn't really been going well so far for Renault and Alpine and their lofty expectations. And so we'll see if they can take that next step this year. But we might be seeing battles between Aston Martin and Alpine this year, in the mix with McLaren as well. Yeah, Netflix Drive to Survive is tomorrow. That's right. I don't know when it's going live. Probably midnight, something like that on the 24th. Dealbreak says, the Drive to Survive series really did a great job bringing in new fans, especially here in the USA. It shows a much different perspective in the sport than in other American leagues. Yeah, okay, so that's interesting. So I guess a question to you then, Dealbreaker, personally to you and maybe to others like you. I'm going to assume by your comment there that you are an American viewer. Did you start watching Formula One because of Drive to Survive, or were you interested in the sport before that as well? Because it's definitely true. I mean, they brought in so many more people into the sport that never would have. And yeah, we don't really have any other type of series like that in terms of showing that behind the scenes access. I mean, you have some for other sports. I know HBO did the 24/7 series for, NHL and things like that, but not kind of covering an entire season like they did for Formula One. So it's been huge. I can tell you personally that just from attending Grand Prix, I mean, I went to the second last race I went to was the 2019 Canadian Grand Prix. And I mean, it was obviously sold out, a lot of people. But the next Grand Prix that I went to, which was last year, the 2022 Hungarian Grand Prix, it was just so many more people. And I wasn't in Canada at this time, but my sister went to the Grand Prix in Montreal last year, and she just said it was unbelievable the amount of people that were there. Like, it was over capacity. You couldn't even move. You couldn't even, get food, get drinks because the lines were so long. And I think that has to do with the Drive to Survive effect. Just so many more people going out to the races. So, I mean, and obviously it's been a big business boom as well. So yeah, I definitely can see that it brings a much different perspective than to some of the other leagues as well. I just kind of wish that it was a little bit more real. That's just personally my opinion, because obviously I'm a longtime fan of the sport, and what's going on, and some of the manufacturer drama was kind of a little off-putting, but it's been good. It's been good for the sport overall, but hopefully in the long run it's not gonna ruin it too bad. I don't know if you guys see this, the interesting Valtteri's new helmet, or not new helmet, I think it's just his helmet for winter testing. Just kind of an interesting design. He's still got the mullet. I don't know if he's keeping that for the whole season, but he's going with the new look there, is he, Valtteri? All right, I'm going to get to the chats, more chats in just a minute. Keep them coming, guys. Really appreciate it. We got less than 90 minutes to go already. Damn, that's crazy. The time is flying by really, really quickly. But let's do an update here on the leaderboard and also the current lap count as well. So you'll see in the middle of your screen there, the little highlighted drivers are the ones that are currently out on track at the moment. And the ones that are faded are either drivers who are obviously not participating in this session or are currently sitting in the garage, not out on track. So leading this session, Max Verstappen, no change there, a 132.837, the fastest lap of the day so far. And he is also the lap leader at 121 laps. No surprise, though, because he is driving both sessions today. Excuse me. And then Carlos Sainz, of course, was in the morning session, P2. I'm just going to go through the drivers, guys, who are currently out on track in this PM session. So Lewis Hamilton, P3 at the moment. He's 6/10 off of Max Verstappen's best time. He's done 35 laps so far in this PM session, so he's been running very smoothly so far. He's currently on a 7-lap stint on that medium tire. And then we got Fernando Alonso in the Aston Martin, currently sitting P6. He's completed 33 laps so far. He's on the medium tire as well. Then Charles Leclerc in the Ferrari. He's done 33 laps so far, sitting in 7th place. Valtteri Bottas for Alfa Romeo in 10th. He's in for the afternoon session. 41 laps completed so far. Nick De Vries in his AlphaTauri debut, sitting in P13. He's done 43 laps. And continuing on with the rest of the field, we have Logan Sargent, the rookie for Williams. 47 laps on the board so far on the medium tire, sitting in P16, 2.1 seconds adrift of the gap. Kevin Magnussen for Haas right behind in 17th. He's completed only 32 laps so far. Esteban Ocon in 18th, 30 laps on the board for him. And Lando Norris currently sitting last at the moment, but he did have an issue on the brakes, which really limited his running. He's only done 18 laps so far. So that is the rundown and the update for that, as my stream just freezes here. Hopefully just reload this for you guys. So that is the update there. I mean, what's kind of standing out to you guys as I'm just kind of watching here? I've got a lot of screens going here, so maybe I'm missing a few things that you guys out there. So let me know in the chat. Is there any driver, any team that's been sticking out to you particular of who looks good? I mean, we have the obvious candidates of the Red Bull, the Ferrari, and the Mercedes look solid so far, but anybody in the midfield may be catching your eye. Let me know what you think in the comments. All right, so just catching up on some of the chat comments here. Dealbrick says, funny thing is I used to watch it when I was younger, but I started watching the show during peak COVID. Now I'm hooked. Yeah, definitely. And I mean, this is the right time to get involved into F1. So yeah, glad to have you along for in F1. The more fans, the better. Christopher says, as an American, I've been a big F1 fan for a long time, but because of my career, I had the opportunity to only kind of follow along with the race results. Drive to Survive didn't influence my fandom. Yeah, that's interesting. Yeah, I mean, if you're like me, I've been the same. I've been following F1 for a long time, and since I started the channel 6 years ago, I've pretty much now been following it as a profession on the side next to my regular job. But yeah, it didn't influence my fandom as well. Really, the only thing that I've just noticed is the rise in popularity. Where, let's say, when we first started the channel back in 2018 or 2019, my group of friends or they knew F1 kind of, but they didn't really know it that well. But now in the last few years, it's really gone sort of mainstream. So that's been the big difference. Yeah, and following up there, Christopher again says brake issues again for the McLaren, shades of last season. I don't think so, because this just seemed like it was some sort of a crack on one of the cylinders, if I remember correctly, on the brake. So not what it was last year. I think last year they had core issues with the brake system, and this was just only some sort of a crack that they noticed, maybe a piece of debris or something like that. So nothing major. And Lando's been on track now for almost 20 to 30 minutes, I think. And he's still going on his stint. No major issues. So, yeah, we got some beautiful pictures too. F1 testing at sunset in Bahrain. Of course, this was a few minutes ago now. I mean, they're pretty much under the floodlights in Bahrain at the moment. And we can see beautiful, beautiful pictures. I love seeing the F1 cars at night. And we're going to see which livery kind of really comes alive at night. But the Williams is looking pretty good, as they just show Logan Sargent going through turn 10, which reminds me we didn't go through the Bahrain International Circuit, but I think a lot of you guys are pretty knowledgeable F1 fans. But I do try and keep the balance because, as we were just discussing with Drive to Survive, there's so many new fans that are coming into the sport, and they might not know a lot of the basics that us longtime viewers would do. So, anytime I might go into just explaining something that is fairly obvious, just know it's also for some of the newer fans out there. So, yeah, do exercise a little bit of patience for some of the obvious things out there. But in terms of F1 testing, if you're new to Formula One, if this is your first time watching testing, and you're asking, okay, how does this work? What is it? I mean, really what it is just one long glorified practice session. And how it works is these teams have only able to run one car during the day, and is totally up to them as to which driver they want to run. They can run one driver, they can run two drivers per day, but they do have to obviously split the time during the day. And they're able to run whatever tire compounds they wish. They can run the hardest, they can run the softest, whatever run plans that they have in store. They can run high fuel, they can run low fuel. It really is up to the teams as well. And they have, of course, almost, I think it is about 6 or 7 hours throughout the whole day that they can do the running. They took an hour of a break for lunch, and that's it as well. So it's nothing too complicated in terms of any rules or regulations. DRS is allowed, of course, in the DRS zones, and drivers are able to enable it whenever they would like. And yeah, that's about it. It's pretty straightforward in terms of testing. And I'm going to get to the chats in just a moment, but I wanted to talk a little bit about the Bahrain International Circuit. For some of you who maybe don't know, this has been the scene for testing the last 2 seasons or so. Typically or traditionally, Barcelona is the ideal location for F1 winter testing. Barcelona is probably one of the better test tracks that Formula One has, mainly because of the combinations of corners. They have a lot of corners that are high speed, they have corners that are medium speed, and then they have a variety of corners that are low speed as well. And that is really the best for testing a Formula One car, because you want to see how your car is performing in all different types of corners. Now, Bahrain does have a variety of corners. If we look at Sector 1, for example, they have a lot of kind of, I would say, medium speed corners and low speed as well. Turn 1 being a heavy braking zone. Then we go up into turn 4 and the 5 and 6 combination. That's more medium to high speed corners. And then when we get into the final sector and we go from turn 12 to 13, that is a high speed section where the car's downforce is really going to be tested. But Bahrain, what it's really known for is a power sensitive circuit. We have 3 long straights that are DRS zones. We have the back straight, the main straight, and then the little dash from turn 11 to turn 10 to turn 11. So it's not the ideal test track that I would say. It's not as good as Barcelona, but it's good enough that the teams can be able to see how their car performs in different types of corners. But certainly the brakes get a lot of work around this track, and this is really a track that eats up the rear tires as well, because you have a lot of heavy braking zones and a lot of really harsh accelerations out of those braking zones as well. So those are kind of the characteristics of the testing tracks. But I asked this in the morning, and I'll pose the question to you guys again. Do you think that the 3 days of testing is enough for this year, or should we get more? Let me know what you guys think. All right, so I will get back into the live chat here, see what you guys are talking about in the meantime. Sven says, I used to watch IndyCars when I was younger. It was only on Eurosport then. Yeah, IndyCar was great back in the day. And obviously for me growing up in Canada, when I was younger, I used to live very close to Niagara Falls. And that was, it's about a 3.5, 4 hour drive from Toronto. And Toronto obviously used to have the IndyCar race. They still do on the streets of Toronto. And that was kind of the family tradition. We'd go there every single summer because Montreal was just a little bit too far. So I never went to an F1 race until I had moved to Ottawa. And of course, Ottawa and Montreal is very close. It's about 200 kilometers or so, 2 hour drive. So IndyCar was kind of my Formula One when I was younger. But back then it was called Champ Car. And Champ Car was probably one of the best series ever. I mean, it was amazing. And you had a lot of very famous drivers, like Sebastian Bourdais, for example, was the Champ Car champion in my day. And you had guys like Will Power, for example. It was just an awesome series. Very, very cool. If you guys have a chance, go on YouTube it. It was great, great racing. The cars sounded phenomenal. So yeah, that's another great series too. And I try and watch IndyCar as much as I can. I just don't have as much time nowadays. Greg says, looks like Albon had a good test in the morning. Albon had a great test in the morning. Yeah, and Greg, if you weren't with us in the AM session, he was P3 when he finished. He was about 7/10 off of the time of Max Verstappen, but I wouldn't even really look at that. He had the most laps completed in the AM session was 72, and it was a smooth run for Alex Albon and Williams. No issues to report. Very smooth running so far. So a positive and a strong start for Williams. And it looks like Logan Sargent is going decently in this session as well. No major issues or anything like that. Much better than 2022 when they had those huge brake issues on Nicholas Latifi's car. And you can kind of see the picture there on the left-hand side of your screen. They were running a lot of FlowViz earlier on in the AM session. So yeah, good start there for Albon and Williams. Sven got two comments here from Sven. He says, with the Penske Marlboro cars and Zanardi and that annoying fast guy in the light blue car. Yeah. It was a little bit before my time, but I definitely do remember that. That Penske Marlboro livery was absolutely beautiful. I love that. Yeah, and it was, they had that blue, when I went to races, it was that blue Forsyth, what was it, Forsyth Indy? Or something like that Paul Tracy used to drive. That was a really beautiful livery as well. I really like that. And then Sven also says Verstappen also did Sergio's session looking at his number of laps. Yeah, he's done. Let's see how much he's up to at now. I think he was on the track. Max is up to 123 laps so far. And yeah, he's going to be in the car tomorrow as well. Let me just double check that. But I think tomorrow he's splitting the day with Perez, and then Perez gets the full third day on Saturday. Let me just confirm that for you guys. So let's see, we got day 2. Yeah, so day 2, AM session will go to Sergio Perez, PM session will go to Max Verstappen, and then day 3 is all for Sergio Perez. Yeah, that's good there. Marty Sweeney says, I have been following since the 70s. Back then, you were very seldom actually got to see anything on TV. It was more in print. Wow, that's really cool, man. That's great that you've been an F1 fan for such a long time. And yeah, I can imagine back then that with Formula One and much like with other sports, you didn't have half as much coverage as you do now. And I'm sure radio too. I don't know if F1 races were popular over the radio. I know certainly football matches and different sports like that, it was big to broadcast over the radio. So yeah, that's it must be nice for you now to be able to have so much coverage. I mean, look at all the stuff that we have at our disposal. We've got live timing, we've got trackside updates, full HD cameras, onboard cameras for every single driver. It really is, it's crazy. And I think we're lucky to be watching F1 with in the age of media that we are now. So yeah, welcome along, Marty. Good to have you along in the stream. Antonio says Fernando is looking good. Yes, he is. 9/10 off of the best time so far. He's currently sitting in P6. I will give you the lap update at the moment for Fernando. So he's done only 39 laps so far in this PM session. It's a little bit lower than some of his counterparts, like, not that much lower if I'm being honest. For example, Lewis Hamilton has done 42 laps so far. Valtteri Bottas has done 41 in this PM session. Charles Leclerc in the Ferrari has done 40. So Aston Martin has been running smooth. If you guys weren't with us in the morning, shortly after they went out onto the track, they actually had an electrical issue on Felipe Drugovic's car, and they had to stop, which brought out a red flag. But it wasn't major. They were able to resolve it fairly quickly, and he got some decent running in at the end of the day. Excuse me, at the end of the day. But yeah, Verstappen's still out on track right now. He is on the C3 tire, pounding around the track. 127 laps completed, still sitting P1. And the aforementioned Fernando Alonso as well out on track. I wonder if they'll strap on a set of softs, but we'll see. We'll see. Continuing on with the comments, Christopher says turn 9 and 10 are a doozy for these ground effects cars. Yeah, they absolutely are. And not only that too, but imagine, turn 10 with how heavy and lumberous these cars are. It really is a tricky challenge for these drivers, just because naturally with how heavy they are, they produce a lot of understeer. The tires this season from Pirelli, the compounds are a little bit better. They are a little bit more robust, so that should eliminate the understeer that had the issue was with the 2022 tires. A lot of understeer on the front tires, and it really made it kind of a nightmare to drive these cars, especially with them being so heavy. But yeah, turn 9 and 10 would be a little bit slower, I think, than it would be in recent years. Let's see. Ace Johnny says, why is Perez not driving? So Perez isn't driving because he's got the full day on Saturday. So the final day of testing, Sergio Perez will be in the car for the full day. And then Sergio Perez will be in the car tomorrow doing the morning session. Max Verstappen will then be doing the PM session. So just kind of a preference, I guess, from Red Bull. I wonder how much of that comes down to the drivers or if it's an engineering decision. I'm not sure. Marty Sweeney says, yeah, Niagara Falls. Oh, you're from Syracuse. Okay, yeah, I knew Syracuse. Yeah, it was, I lived, it was a smaller town closer to Niagara Falls called Welland, Ontario. It was about, 10, 15-minute drive from Niagara Falls, and of course, Buffalo being there too, which is interesting because I lived there for, 8 or 9 years, and I never went across to Buffalo while I lived there. I only went to Niagara Falls a few times. But yeah, of course, I know Syracuse. Everybody used to go there to go shopping. So yeah, say hello to Syracuse. Mark L says, new to F1 here, but it seems shortened testing seems to make it more interesting as far as more unpredictability over the first few races. Excited for this season. Well, hello, Mark. Good to have you along on the stream as well, and glad to have you on as a fan of the sport. Yeah, you are just in time, joining F1 just at the right time. At really kind of a great age for Formula One, but I think you're right. Yeah, it does provide sort of unpredictability because, some of these drivers are only going to get realistically a few hours in the car before the first race of the season. So, yeah, I think it does add a little bit of unpredictability. That could also mean unpredictability in terms of how the car behaves when we get to the first race of the season. It's just really interesting because you think of all other sports, football, for example, or basketball, or hockey. I mean, these teams go through extensive training camps before the month begins to go and start the season. But it's such a different sport because even if you're not in season, let's say you're a footballer, you can go out to the pitch, kick the ball around. If you're a basketball player, you can get 10 guys and simulate a game. But if you're a Formula One driver, you can't just, take the car out of the garage whenever you want and drive. I mean, there's restrictions on how often you can run the current cars, and there's even restrictions on how much you can run the old cars as well. So actually getting time in the car is very, very limited in modern Formula One. So it is very interesting the way that our sport works, but it certainly does add a little bit of unpredictability. I know if you ask the drivers, they'll probably want more time in the car, but who knows? But the best drivers in the world are going to be able to excel under any circumstances, that's for sure. Christopher says, just kind of following on our conversation from a few minutes ago, best sport for radio, baseball, still love it. Yeah, that's pretty classic, right? That's sort of, we didn't really have that, of course, growing up, but yeah, Americans back in those days, the 50s, the 60s, the 70s, baseball over the radio was a big deal. So yeah, probably not Formula One as much. Antonio says, out of all driver moves, which driver do you think will perform the best at their new team? Great question. I kind of got this question earlier about rookies. I think, so which driver will perform the best at their new team? I would have to say in this first season, I'm going to go Fernando Alonso. I think Alonso will perform the best at his new team just because he's driving at a high level. Alonso always does well no matter which team he drives for, but I think Aston Martin will be a pretty good fit for him. So I'm going to pick Fernando Alonso to go there as well. But close second place, I'd probably say would be, like a Pierre Gasly. I won't count the rookies. I mean, although they are new teams, I won't count the rookies in this conversation. So I'll go Fernando Alonso. Yeah, for sure. Definitely. All right, we're coming up on shortly an hour left here. We're approaching 4:30 p.m. local time here in Europe. Of course, I'm no longer located in Canada. I am living in Serbia at the moment, so I am on the European time zone. But we are approaching 10:30 a.m. Eastern time back in Canada, in America, and even earlier if you are watching in the west coast of those countries. So hello to everybody. Good morning or good afternoon. Really appreciate everybody in the chat as well. I'm going to get to some more of your comments and questions in just a moment. I'm just kind of having a look here at Logan Sargent in the Williams. The FW45, I must say, looks brilliant under the lights in their new livery. Sargent currently sitting P16. We'll see where he ends up after this lap. He's completed 54 laps so far in this PM session, which I think is the most out of any driver in this PM session so far. That was his 55th lap. Jumped up into P9. Solid lap there from the young American. And we were just speaking earlier about the Drive to Survive effect and, Formula One growing in places like the United States. And there you go. There you guys have it. The gentleman from Syracuse and some of you other guys as well. You got your first full-time American driver since Scott Speed in 2008. So, it would be nice for you guys to get a homeboy on the team. Of course, Sargent is from Florida. I think he was born in Boca Raton. So he is great to have an American back on the grid. We had a few seasons ago, Alexander Rossi stepped in for about a race or two, but Sargent is the first full-time American driver, which I would say just goes to show the effect of the growth of Formula One in the sport in America, because I think Sargent is a solid driver, very talented, has a lot of potential, but I question whether he would have gotten the opportunity just a few years ago in similar circumstances. So, but I'm rooting for him for sure. I think he comes highly rated, so looking forward to him. Now, let's see some of the question here. Cosman says, Ferrari doesn't look too good till now. Leclerc is too slow compared to Sainz or Hamilton. Yeah, we actually haven't talked too much about Ferrari at the moment. Carlos Sainz, I'd say, in the AM session had a very good morning session. He had the second quickest time so far, completed 72 laps. Leclerc currently sitting 7th, 1.1 seconds off of Max Verstappen's best time. And he's finished 41 laps so far. And now let me just dive into what kind of tires that he's been on. He's on an 8-lap stint on the medium tire at the moment. But I wouldn't be too worried at this point, to be honest with you. I think that Leclerc and Ferrari just going through the paces at the moment, and they're just really kind of doing checks and system checks and everything. I think they're easing into it. I wouldn't be too worried about any of that right now. But Leclerc currently has ran only the medium tire, so he's done 4 stints on the medium tire, and he's done 2 stints on one of the Pirelli prototype tires. Now, if you compare that to Hamilton, they've done similar, except Hamilton has done all of his stints on the medium there. I don't think that he's run a prototype tire yet. So yeah, I wouldn't worry about it too much, honestly. Let me see if I can get any Ferrari news for you. What is the official Ferrari saying? It's tough to tell, right, guys? Because many of these teams aren't necessarily going to tell you what type of programs they're doing. Some of them actually do. They'll tell you that they're currently on a race run, or they're doing quali simulations or something like that, but it's hard to know fuel loads and everything like that. Don't worry just yet, Ferrari fans. The hope is still there. The hope is still there. Yeah, no updates yet from Ferrari. Just a beautiful SF23. I think one of my favorite liveries is the Ferrari this year. Okay, let's see. What can we find out about Ferrari here on Twitter? Of course, guys, we are on Twitter, BMF1_show. You can see it in the middle of your screen there, but the links are also in the description below. So, yeah, definitely follow us on Twitter there. We had to change our accounts a few years ago, So we lost a lot of our followers. So if you're wondering where our account went, we had to create a new one. So definitely check us out there. We do post most of our updates on social media as well. Good news from Mercedes as well. They're reporting no bouncing. We saw a little bit of porpoising, I think, from Ferrari earlier on in the season, but the track is a little bit rougher this year. Frederick Vasseur of Ferrari was saying that after the AM session that the track is a little bit rougher this year, so that's why we saw a lot of, not necessarily bottoming out from Carlos Sainz's Ferrari, but his Ferrari was sparking away in the AM session. So, but not as much as it was last season, that's for sure. But especially for Mercedes, that was a big problem for them, and they've reported no bouncing on the opening day of testing, which is good news for Mercedes fans. Okay, let's see if we can find some latest updates here as Esteban Ocon goes just a little bit quicker. P16 at the moment, 2 seconds off of the pace for Alpine. We will do a rundown shortly of how the times are as we approach the top of the hour. We usually do an update of the leaderboard at the top of the hour and the bottom of the hour as well. Just absolutely beautiful pictures, though, coming from the sunset and the night session here in Bahrain. You really love it. Let's dive back into the chats as well. Supermax test. Yes, it is. He's have definitely a super busy day for him. Antonio says, see some needs soft tire runs in the last hour. I hope we get some. It'd be really interesting to see if we got any runs as well. Again, here we are, an hour left into the PM session number 2. And other than for McLaren, we haven't really seen any technical issues. No cars stopping out on track, no major failures. Knock on wood, it remains like that. So hopefully the teams have some soft tire runs in their plans. Dealbrick says, is it true Alpha changed the steering wheel to accommodate Bottas during his Mercedes days? I don't know if it was to accommodate Bottas, but I do know that they did change some things on the steering wheel, but it's certainly possible. The steering wheel is something that is very... it is customizable, but it's usually typical when a driver has been with a team for a few years. I know Lewis Hamilton customized his steering wheel. He redesigned essentially the whole thing. And it's really for driver preference, of course, in terms of where you place buttons as well. But I don't know if I'm not sure if it's that exact reason why, but it certainly could be. Maybe he just found some things that were a little bit easier in his Mercedes days and more to his liking. But I wonder how much they can change, because if you're somebody like Bottas who spent 5 seasons at a team where you're used to having, your DRS here or your engine modes on this rotor and your differential here, and every change is different, right? I mean, he goes from Mercedes power unit to Ferrari power unit, so there's different buttons, different locations. For me personally, as a driver, I would definitely like to change some of it, but you do have to relearn that steering wheel anytime you go to a new team. So yeah, I mean, definitely probably why he changed it. Another question or a comment from Christopher saying, I'd expect to see some quality runs on day 3 and more soft tire running then. Typically, yeah, traditionally that is when we do get to see more of those kind of what they call the glory runs or the show runs on the final day of testing. But I mean, we might see some. Let's see. We got an hour or so remaining, and a lot of the teams right now are running actually the medium tire, except for McLaren. McLaren and Lando Norris have been running that white hard tire for a while, so I think that they're doing. Let me just see here. I think they are doing more race runs than any of the other teams. Oops. Get the chat loaded back up here. Okay, let's see what else is going on here. I'd like to see some more trackside videos if we can. If, again, you guys are new to these things, unfortunately, I cannot show you the footage from the actual F1 TV feed. I wish I could. It would be so much better, but we would get booted off of YouTube for copyright. So we have to go old school in this one, radio only for this stream. But we do have Norris, who I just talked about. He's on the medium compound tire, the C3, after doing quite a few runs on that medium tire. Let's see how much laps he's up to. Had some earlier brake troubles, but now he seems to be past those. And he has done, just loading it here, Lando Norris is currently up to 25 laps. So with an hour to go, he might be able to get close to 40 laps there. We'll see what how much fuel he's got on the car. Personal best so far in the first sector. So I anticipate this will be his best lap of the day so far. We'll see where he's able to finish. His teammate Oscar Piastri was only good enough for 17th in the morning. But again, don't really look too much into those times because we don't know what exactly they were running. So let's see where Norris, excuse me, is going to end up here. Just exiting out of the final corner and across the line for a 1:34.0. So good enough for 8th place. A solid lap there for Lando Norris. Yeah, so there we get to see a little bit more of what the McLaren pace is like as he goes 8th fastest there. Yeah, looked like that was more of a performance run because I think that he is slowing down now for a cool down lap. And we'll see if he goes for another one here. We'll see how it goes, guys. Keep the comments and keep the questions going. I don't know if I'll be ending it early or not. I might just see out the rest of this hour because I do have to prepare for the post day 1 testing debrief show, which will be uploaded a little bit later on. Just trying to think off the top of my head. Is currently 10:30 a.m. Eastern time. Is that right? Yeah, 10:30. Hold on. What time is it? Okay, yes, I was right. It is 10:30 a.m. Eastern time, which means that it is 4:30 p.m. here, Central European time. So hoping to possibly get that debrief show up for 6 p.m. Eastern time, 6 p.m. European time, 12 p.m. Eastern time. I'd probably say like at the latest that should be achievable. It's going to be a really simple 20-30 minute max, just kind of review show, debrief show. So if you have any questions actually and you want me to talk about that during that show, comment down below. I will be pre-recording that, so it won't be live, but I'll be able to put that in as well during that stream, or excuse me, during that video. So yeah, let me know. As we see, Valtteri's got an interesting helmet here from Valtteri Bottas for testing. I believe this is just his testing helmet, and it won't be a permanent one. But interesting look for Bottas in recent times. I wonder if that's how. I haven't seen an onboard of him, but I don't know if that's the actual one that he's using or if that's just a tear off. But yeah, that is pretty unique, interesting to say the least. All right, so who else do we have on track? Lewis Hamilton is currently out. He is on what looks to be the C2 tire, which is the yellow marked tire, but without... Oh, no, I think that one has brackets. Excuse me, my mistake. C3 tire. It is hard to tell when it's at speed. But yeah, he's on one of the medium tires right now. Lando Norris going for another hot lap. Personal best in the Sector 1, so it looks like the MCL 60 stretching their legs just a little bit here, seeing what kind of performance they have. But, made a mistake in the second sector, did Norris, because it's not a personal best slower in that sector. Interesting if he's going to be able to go quicker than the Ferrari. Norris is about a tenth or so behind Charles Leclerc in 7th. And Norris crosses the line for another lap, stays 8th fastest. All right, I'm going to just check in on the live chat here. Dealbrick coming in again saying, I'm hoping Hamilton can compete this year for the championship. I feel if he can't do it this year, then it'll be his last chance to break the record. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know if it would be his last chance. I think that he's intent on staying in Formula One for at least another 2 or 3 seasons, so he'd always have a chance. But I guess if you're saying maybe that if Mercedes doesn't get it right this year with their car, then he might not have a chance to do it again, especially if Red Bull continues their domination like they did last season. We obviously know what happened the last time one team dominated, but yeah, it would be good to get him in the fight again for the championship with Max Verstappen, get Charles Leclerc in there too, hopefully a 3-team fight for the championship. That would be very, very nice this year. But yeah, we'll see where he ends up in 2023. So far, pretty solid day, pretty quiet day for Mercedes, typical of them in testing. No really headline news. I mean, he has the third fastest time of the day so far, but good run so far from Lewis and the Mercedes as well from George Russell in the AM session 2. I will pull up, let's see how many laps Lewis Hamilton has done. He has done 48 laps so far in this afternoon session, so a really healthy amount of laps as we got 55 minutes left in the session as Nick DeVries just popped up into 13th place. 134.5 there, personal best for DeVries. Had a little bit of a moment here going through turn 5 and 6. Yeah, a little bit too wide there on the exit of 7. Running on that curb there. Very easy to spin out too if you floor it there on that curb. And then, a little bit of oversteer as well on the back end on the exit of turn 12. And that AlphaTauri as well, sparking away through the high-speed sections of turn 12 and 13. The plank getting plenty of work in there at the bottom. So coming up on 50 minutes left of today's testing, guys. It's been a fun day so far. Good day of streams. Really been enjoying the return of F1 action so far. And of course, guys, if you do appreciate the work that we've been doing, not just on these streams, but also in the preseason, and you're looking to support our work, there is the super chat option below. Totally optional, but if you guys feel like you believe in our work and want to support the channel, all donations go directly toward the channel and, of course, all our expenses that come with it. So the super chat option is there if you'd like to do so. Other modes of donation, you can check the description below. We've got our PayPal, and we've got Buy Me a Coffee as well. If you feel like it, totally not necessary. I know that it is a bit difficult time for everybody in terms of the money as it is. But if you don't want to do it that way, the best way that you can support us is just by doing what you're doing right now. That's watching the videos, commenting on them, liking the videos, subscribing to the channel, and just make sure that you're always keeping up to date with what we're doing. We got a lot of preseason videos that we put out there. So if you're not sure, if this is the first time that you're joining the channel, once you're done watching here, go to the homepage of our channel and you're going to see all the videos that we've done. We've done some teammate analysis breakdowns of the new partnerships this season, Ocon and Gasly, Hulkenberg and Magnussen, and many others as well. And we've also done a team profile for every single one of the F1 teams this year, just to kind of get you up to speed on the new changes for those teams. So plenty of content to get you through from now until next week when we get the first race of the season, which is exciting. Looking ahead to next week, you should be expecting the A to Z guide coming in the midweek, probably around Wednesday or Thursday before the race. And we should be recording our 2023 season preview of the BMF1 Show podcast. Hopefully we'll be doing that over the weekend and then releasing that early next week as well. And then, yeah, the big race, of course, on Sunday following that. So we are ready to go full throttle on the 2023 F1 season. It's really, really exciting. Fernando Alonso is currently out on an outlap here. He's got a new set of tires and looks like he's looking to go for a fast one here. Let's see where Alonso ends up. Charles Leclerc also out on an outlap at the moment. Alonso sitting in P6. He is currently on the medium tire. Well, let's see what Alonso can do with this lap. I'll get to that tweet just in a moment on the left-hand side of the screen. I wanted to talk about that, but I forgot. And then we're going to talk a little bit about Ferrari afterwards as well. But let's see what Fernando can do. Personal best in the first sector. Fresh tires. Track temperature is, you got air temperature at 23 degrees. It's going to cycle through here in a moment, and I'll tell you what track temperature is at. Not too much wind. Track temperature, 27 degrees. So it has cooled down considerably since the start of this session, and certainly since this morning when it was up in the mid 40s. So yeah, definitely. Oh, Alonso, pretty solid lap here. 2/10 down off of Max Verstappen's best time. Personal best here, though, for Fernando. Now let's see where he ends up. Just exiting out the final corner at the moment. And Alonso will go P2. Wow, very, very strong lap there for Fernando Alonso. Just at the end there, personal best in the first two sectors, but it was that last sector that really did it for him. Purple in that final sector. So very, very good lap there from Fernando Alonso. As we see, we're seeing a replay here of a pit stop that they did for Max Verstappen. Looks like the right rear, I'm not sure if the caliper's smoking away or if it was from the engine, but there was some smoke at the right rear of the car there. Looks like, interesting. We'll see what that update is all about. He's currently up on the stands in the garage. But yeah, very good lap there from Fernando Alonso. Just reloading the timing here for you guys and get the latest updates. But an excellent lap there. Some of these drivers, we might not see soft tire runs, but we might see some more performance runs on these medium tires. Leclerc is next up. And he just goes fourth fastest with a time of a 1:33.2. That bumps him up into P4 ahead of Lewis Hamilton and just behind his teammate, only by a few 100ths of a second. So, yeah, decent lap there from Leclerc. But Leclerc, in comparison to Fernando Alonso, he's losing almost a tenth and a half in the second sector and then almost 2.5 tenths in the final sector. Alonso really blitzed Sector 3, personal best, fastest out of anybody so far in the session in Sector 3, and not far off of Max Verstappen's fastest time. 2/100ths of a second slower than Max Verstappen. So we had a pretty decent conversation about Fernando Alonso not too long ago in the chat. And there you go. I told you he's one of the drivers to watch for in this season. He's showing it early. So again, the big caveat being we don't know what type of fuel Aston Martin is running. We don't know what type of energy recovery system deployments he's using. But nonetheless, still a positive sign so far for Aston Martin. Now let me just address this tweet I brought up a little bit earlier. Just a comment here from Helmut Marko saying that they're very satisfied about their planned program, that it went smoothly, and they're almost at the fine-tuning stage, which that's pretty good news considering it's only one day of running. And Marko said that their tire degradation seems to be quite good compared to the others. Also praised the fact that Max Verstappen had made another step here in terms of his tire-saving abilities. Marko believes the top three, Red Bull, Ferrari, Mercedes, will be quite ahead of the others again, though he mentioned that it is difficult to judge the others because of the different programs. Which is normal. We've been saying that ever since we started this stream, but I hope that's not true. we were talking about that. We hope that the top three and the rest of the field will get closer, but Helmut Marko certainly believes that that will not be the case, but we'll see. Still too early to decide. So as we're winding down the session here, about 45 minutes left in this day of testing, we're not seeing any soft tires being strapped onto these cars, but we are seeing fresh sets of the medium, the C3 tire being put on these cars, and some teams are doing a little bit of performance runs, Fernando Alonso being one of them, Charles Leclerc in the Ferrari, Lando Norris as well did one too. So yeah, it's different teams running different programs. For example, as you see Haas on the screen here, 43 laps logged, P19 at the moment for Kevin Magnussen in the PM session with a best time of a 1:35.0. So I think Haas doing more sort of race runs and longer runs and doing that form of testing rather than any performance at the moment. So what stood out to you as we're wrapping up at about, I'll probably be live for about another, almost for the entirety of this session before I go to record the debrief show. But who stood out to you so far, not just today, but in particular in this PM session, as this is the session 2 stream that we did. But which driver and which team do you think really kind of stood out to you and had a solid day? I'm curious to know what you guys think as the fans. It will also be interesting to read up some of the comments from the people trackside and to see which teams kind of stand out the most. You know, it's one thing to try and read into the times, but it's also another thing to be able to get some expertise from journalists and F1 personnel who are in the pit lane, live trackside as well, who can kind of give an idea of what the rumor, what is the paddock gossip about which teams look strong and which teams might be sandbagging or which teams are really behind the 8 ball here. But so far, so good for teams like Red Bull, Aston Martin looking pretty solid right now in the hands of Fernando Alonso, and even Williams. I mean, you have both Williams in the top 10 at the moment, which is, I think, a really solid start for them. As we see a replay of Valtteri Bottas' Alfa Romeo sparking away as he heads down into turn 1. The Alfa looks very, very good under the lights with that new black and red livery. So Charles Leclerc out on track at the moment. He's currently sitting in 4th place. I believe he is on an outlap. Yes, he is. And I think that is a fresh set of tires. I just saw in the photo there earlier, they were making some setup changes to the Ferrari. And that's funny. This is actually a great Twitter account. If you don't follow at Vettel Leclerc, she does a lot of great updates, not just on Ferrari, but and also a lot of the kind of the paddock rumors and everything about where the teams are in terms of performance. So give that account a follow. She says, when Newey mentioned Aston Martin as one of their rivals this year, maybe he was onto something. I actually didn't hear that comment from Adrian Newey, but yeah, he might be. Of course, as I mentioned earlier in the show, his protege, or the man he used to work with, Dan Fallows, is now the technical director at Aston Martin. So it seems like he's learned a few things from one of the masters of aerodynamics, Adrian Newey. Looks like he's designed another solid car in the RB19, but we'll take a focus right now on Ferrari since we were on that topic. Charles Leclerc currently on a push lap. Ooh, in the rear sliding about there as he exits turn 5 and 6 as we get into sector 2 here. And of course, one of the most tricky corners on the calendar in general, turn 10, downhill braking. You have to be turning and braking at the same time. So easy to lock that front left, especially now with the cars being so heavy, and he's backed out. Yeah, he had quite a few mistakes in Sector 2 there, so he backed out there. Let's see if he'll be able to recharge the batteries, cool the tires slightly, and he'll go again, trying to improve on that 4th place. 4/10 off of Max Verstappen's best time is Charles Leclerc, finished P2 in the Drivers' Championship last year, of course, looking to do one better in 2023. All right, new comments here from Dealbreaker says, Alonso and Aston Martin, I really hope they do something big this year. Yeah, me too. If you had to kind of rank a hype, if you rank the championship in terms of hype in the preseason, Aston Martin would probably even win that preseason championship. They had a lot of really good energy and hype in their launch and since then, but I don't know. Are we seeing them finally deliver on that promise? It looks pretty good so far, I think, in the hands of Fernando Alonso. I'm just looking at a replay now. Yeah, just as I was talking about there, turn 10, he locked up the front left, had to back out of it. You're going to lose a ton of lap time getting down there. And I mean, it's not just you lose the lap time on corner entry, it's more corner exit because you've got the long straight that comes afterwards, so you lose a lot of top speed when you lock up the front left like that. Yeah, and Greg Nolan saying, I'm impressed with Williams. Yeah, I think that Williams will be a talking point in my debrief show. If you're looking at kind of the winners and losers of day one of testing, Williams I would put as one of the winners for sure. I mean, you got Alex Albon still sitting in 6th place with his lap time in the AM session, and his teammate, not that far behind, sitting in 10th. He's 1.4 seconds off the gap. Had a solid run earlier that got him into the top 10. Pretty good so far, I would say, for Williams. More importantly, I think looking past the lap times is they've just had a good, solid day of running with no problems. Let's see what the comments will be from the team principal and the drivers afterwards. Although we don't read much into the lap times, you can kind of read into the driver body language. You know, if they're really upbeat, if they're happy, they're smiling a lot, you can tell that they have a good feeling in the car. So I'm interested to see what the drivers will have to say and what types of programs they were running today. We'll be curious what they had planned. But yeah, good for Williams. Good for them for sure. All right, so we got another hot lap here. We might not see the soft tire, but we're going to see some performance runs here as we round out day one of 2023 F1 testing. Lando Norris currently setting personal best in Sector 1 on a fresh set of the medium tire, the C3. Nice and smooth through turn 10 as he gets the power down. DRS open as he barrels his way down to turn 12. And we're going to get a look at his second sector time here in just a moment. Yeah, 0.8 off of Verstappen there, but still personal best, so it looks like he should be improving on his best lap of the day. So let's see where Norris slots in here. Currently sitting P8 as he crosses the line. Stays P8. Did go a little bit faster, but not by much. Not enough to get past Guan Yu Zhou, who sits just a position ahead of him in 7th. So let's see. We're trying to find some latest updates here from Twitter. I'm still getting a bunch of old tweets. Yeah, this was the somebody was asking the same questions. There was the difficulty of the same issue last year with McLaren's brakes. We don't know. I don't think it was, but we'll talk about that a little bit more in the debrief show. Hopefully, we'll have some more information about what the issue was exactly. But yeah, not a good start for McLaren. Although you have Norris sitting in P8, but it's just having those issues is not necessarily what you want to see on the first day of testing. So still, as we are approaching 35 minutes remaining in the session, still haven't had any red flags. I don't remember seeing any yellow flags either. Safety cars, virtual safety cars. A very smooth preseason testing so far. Very, very good to see. Oops, loading the wrong tweets there. I just wanted to touch base with Albert's Twitter account here because he's posting a lot of great updates directly from the pit lane where we can kind of get a sense of more of the performance side of things. And he just has a tweet here about porpoising. Let's see if I can click on this. Hopefully it loads for me. I do apologize if some of the camera or the audio sync isn't there. My computer is working quite hard at the moment to keep up with all the tabs that are open and the live stream that's going on. So it's probably not operating at its optimal level right now, but hopefully it's not too bad for you guys. More important that the audio is good and that you guys can hear me clearly. And it looks like that's the case because I haven't seen any complaints so far in the chat. But do let me know if there's any technical issues. Do not hesitate to point them out to me. So let's look at what Albert has to say here. Speaking on porpoising, he says, the porpoising is still there on some cars. Teams are testing different ride heights to evaluate changes on performances and bouncing. That's certainly been evident because we have seen a lot of cars bouncing a lot, definitely. I mean, we saw the Ferrari in the morning was doing a lot of bouncing. Whether that's porpoising or whether that's exactly what Albert's talking about here of just maybe running a lower ride height, this is what testing is for. They're going to try and find what the optimal setup is with these current set of regulations and their new cars, but we definitely still see it. Not as dramatic as it was in 2022. And also interesting, I see Logan Sargent is just doing another drive through the pit lane with a fresh batch of Flovis paint on the front of the car. He's just come into the pits as they do a practice pit stop. Let's see if he goes back out on track. Yeah, it looks like he is back out on track. So interesting that at this point of the day, Williams is still running some aerodynamic tests on the Flovis. It was on the front nose cone of the car, so they're trying to get a feel for where the air is flowing there. Let's see if I can find the tweet about McLaren's brakes. Here we go. Yeah, so we talked about this earlier. For those of you guys who were concerned about the McLaren brake issues, they were stopped in the garage. Mechanics repairing the brake cooling intake connection to the front wheel deflectors. So the little cracks there. So I don't know what the issue was last year. Maybe let me know in the chat if you guys remember what the exact technical issue was with the brakes last season. But they were able to fix it because Lando Norris has been on track ever since then. And let me see how many laps he's up to at the moment. Lando Norris in P8 is up to 34 laps right now. Just to compare that to some of his other rivals in the session, in the PM session, Alonso's done 51 laps. Charles Leclerc is at 49 laps. Lewis Hamilton has 51 laps. So a little bit fewer than what his rivals have been able to do, but still a decent recovery from McLaren to get a significant amount of laps on the board. And for example, his teammate Piastri did 52 laps this morning. So not bad, not bad. And it looks like Hamilton is... It looks like he's on the harder tire at the moment, the white stripes. So he's on the C2. So he's going for no performance on that tire, more of a race run there. Yeah, very interesting here. Yeah, give Albert a follow on Twitter. He provides a lot of great updates from the pit lane where we get more of a sense of it. I don't know which publication that he works for, actually, but yeah, clearly he does have access because he is in the pit lane. Oh, just a brand new tweet from him there. Ride heights and heave spring changed on Aston Martin. That's on Fernando Alonso's AMR 23. So yeah, a lot of teams trying out different ride height settings so far in this test. Very, very interesting. All right, we're coming up on 30 minutes to go. Only a half hour left of day one of testing. We're going to be wrapping up the stream shortly, guys. So if you got any more comments and any more questions, be sure to drop it in the chat. I've got the chat open on my phone here. So I will be answering any questions or any comments that you have in the next half an hour or so. And then I'll be off to do the debrief show and looking at the day's results, releasing that video later today. And then, yeah, the prep already starts for tomorrow, getting the live stream ready for the PM session. Just to reiterate again, we will be live tomorrow, 3 p.m. Central European Time, 9 a.m. Eastern Time, and we've got some guests coming on as well. So fingers crossed I won't be solo for tomorrow. So I think that we should have a very interesting show tomorrow. Tim Haraney hopefully will be joining us for a few minutes, and we'll have some of the Backmarkers of One Show podcast guys coming on as well to join me. So tomorrow should be a little bit more interesting because I think we'll get teams starting to stretch their legs a little bit in terms of performance. We're already seeing it at the end of this session with the medium tire runs, and hopefully tomorrow we'll get some looks at the soft tire as well. But we don't know exactly what the plans will be for these teams. Charles Leclerc is out on track again, and he's backed off again. Made a mistake, I think, in one of the early corners there. No changes yet on the leaderboard here. It was about 15 or 20 minutes ago, Fernando Alonso lit up the screens going P2 in the last hour of the session. Lando Norris had a good run that got him into the top 10. Other than that, though, Charles Leclerc as well got himself up into 4th, but we haven't had much movement since then. And we'll see in the last 30 minutes or so if any of the teams decide to put some low fuel in and see what they can do to at least maybe steal the headlines here on day one. Who do you guys think, if you had to pick 2 winners and 2 losers, which teams would be those for your case? I'm going to be talking about that in the debrief show, but curious as to what you guys think about that on day 1 of testing. As Antonio says, Alonso is going to attack the top 3 teams this season for sure. I have no doubt about that. It just depends on how good the car will be, if he'll have a chance to do that. But hopefully he will. And you know what type of driver Fernando Alonso is. Certainly not shy to mix it up with the best of them. But I mean, wouldn't that be nice to have Alonso up there fighting with Verstappen, Hamilton, Leclerc, Carlos Sainz as well? But we'll have to wait and see. So De Vries is just finishing another lap as well. Trying to see if we have any new news coming from the pit lane. Nothing to report. Yeah, not an eventful day. Not an eventful day in terms of anything for us to report, which is good news for the teams because it's been relatively smooth running. Probably one of the most smooth opening days of testing that I remember in quite a while. So with the limited running this season, I think that's great news for all these teams, and we'll see if it continues in the next 2 days. But there I'm just looking at right now. I see Max Verstappen just overtaking Logan Sargent in the Williams with all of that green Floviz paint on the front nose of the car. Max Verstappen, who's had a very busy day. I'm sure he's going to be pretty tired once he finishes this day. He's got 141 laps under his belt for today's session. Of course, he is doing all of the driving today. Sergio Perez will be in the car tomorrow morning, and he will share the day with Max Verstappen. Verstappen will be in during the PM session when we're going to be live tomorrow. And Sergio Perez will then get the full day on Thursday. But let's take a focus on Max Verstappen's hot lap here. Looks like he's got a fresh set of tires on. Yeah, he's only done 2 laps on this current set of the medium tires. So, not sure what type of fuel he's got in the car, but I think he's going to be going for more of a performance lap here. We'll get a sense of that here as he comes up to the timing sector. Okay, 1.4 seconds off his best time, so he's not going for a performance run. This looks like it was going to be a longer run on the medium tire. So it seems like we might be done in terms of the headline lap times for the day, unless if one of these midfield teams like Alpine or maybe McLaren want to get out there again and try to set the times alight. But there's actually a team, Alpine, who's been incredibly quiet on day 1 of testing. Gasly in P16, Esteban Ocon in P17. Ocon has done 44 laps so far in this PM session. Haven't seen too much of them, actually, today. Again, can't read too much into that. I don't think they really had any issues or anything like that. They could have just been on a different testing program, which I will have to do some research on to see what types of things that they were doing. Currently got 6 cars out on track at the moment. 6 of the available, I think, 9 drivers that we have. And Verstappen is continuing on his way as we're winding down here, approaching 25 minutes left. Fernando Alonso back out on track. They just recently made some setup changes on the AMR 23. We'll keep an eye out for him, see if he's going to be doing any more performance runs here in the last 20 minutes or so. Oops. Antonio says, yeah, I just asked a few minutes ago about what your winners and losers would be for today. Winners, Aston Martin and Red Bull. Losers, Haas and Williams for today. Yeah, there's another team, Haas, we haven't talked about too much. Let's do a little bit of a focus on Haas. They've been relatively quiet today. Nico Hülkenberg, I would actually say in the morning, had a pretty solid session. He had quite a few stints on the prototype tire, but regardless, ended up doing a time good enough for 11th place, and he did 51 laps on the board as well, which is solid. I haven't seen that Haas have had any major issues or anything like that. Kevin Magnussen in the PM session, he is the slowest at the moment, all the way down in 19th place, 43 laps on the board for him. So, I mean, it's okay when you compare it to his rivals, like Alonso's done 51 laps, for example. Sargent has done a lot of laps in this session, 70 laps so far under Sargent's belt. Well done to him. Valtteri Bottas, for example, 63 laps. So they're a little bit behind some of their rivals. But again, we don't know what type of program they are running. So I'm going to try and figure out what they were trying to do and what other comments are from some of the teams. But yeah, I would agree with Aston and Red Bull certainly being winners for today. Dealbrick says, I'm really wondering about Haas this year. I have a feeling they're predictable at this point. They start strong and just fall off after 4th and 5th place. I really hope they can do something, though. I hope so, too. They have more money coming into the team this year through their new title sponsor, MoneyGram, so they should have more resources. They are scheduling, or they have in plans for a new development schedule, meaning that they're going to try and develop the car more regularly, more than they did last year. I think last year they had to wait till the Hungarian Grand Prix to get any sort of significant updates onto the car that really would have made a difference for them. But it's hard to predict. You know, it's kind of hard to predict right now from 10th to 7th place of who's going to end up where, because we could see Williams maybe jump up a spot or two, Haas fall down one or two. I had good feelings about Haas in the preseason. I'm not going to judge it right now because it's still too early. And I think you have to look at Hülkenberg's time in the morning and say it's a pretty solid run. And it looks like they're doing something different with Kevin Magnussen in the afternoon right now. But he is about to go out on track once again, as Fernando Alonso was on another performance run, but went very wide there on turn 15 and ends up going 0.2 slower than Max Verstappen's best time. So yeah, Alonso is definitely, a lot of oversteer on the exit of 15 and had to steer into it to correct it, so lost a lot of time there. But Alonso's pushing. He is pushing a lot, that is for sure. He seems pretty comfortable. I would say he looks pretty comfortable in the AMR 23. But this will be good for him. I hope that Aston Martin give him, if physically he can do it, the next 2 days of testing, because that would be really good for him to get up to speed with the car. But nice to see Alonso, classic Alonso, wringing the hands of the steering wheel, full oversteer, full lock and everything at the age of 41. It's good to see. Let's see if we got any new updates. I'm seeing stuff from a long time ago now. Yes, the F1 cars at night look absolutely tremendous. I mean, even the RB19, which no new livery, and we're kind of used to that. Even that car looks really good under the lights. So we've got 20... under 22 minutes left for today's session. We'll be wrapping up very soon, guys, and then I will be off to prepare for the debrief show. Yeah, just past 5 o'clock here, local time. And it is, just past 11 o'clock Eastern time for those watching back in the Americas. I see a new comment here from Kofi who's saying the W14 is less bouncy than most of the cars. It certainly is, and they said that they actually had no porpoising and no bouncing in the AM session. And I think that that continued on for the PM session here for Lewis Hamilton as well. So, yeah, I think that's great news. They were one of the worst last season, and certainly at this point of the year, that was a significant issue for them, which they've seemed to have resolved. So, yeah, good to see. Good to see it's not that much of an issue as it was last year. And yeah, definitely, I would say Alonso's certainly determined to try and get the fastest lap time on day one. I wonder if he's going to go for another run. He's 2/100ths of a second off of Max Verstappen's quickest time of the day. 1:32.837 is the best time for today, but it's kind of no surprise. It's good. If you're an Aston Martin fan, I think that's really good to see that he's that comfortable in the car, that he's able to try and push that much at the moment. I mean, regardless, I know it's day one. Let's not get ahead of ourselves, but it is a positive sign nonetheless. So we got Esteban Ocon now for Alpine, who we just talked about. It looks like he's on a fresh set of tires as well, sitting bound in 17th place. Alpine hasn't really done much in the way of performance runs, and he just comes into the pits, so he will have no performance runs then for Ocon and Alpine. Lando Norris is out on an outlap, and it looks like Fernando is going for it again. I'm trying to see here if he's on a flying lap or not. Yeah, it definitely looks like he is pushing. I don't know his sector times. They don't have the live timing up right now. Oh, he might have made a mistake actually into turn one. It's probably what they're going to show us right now. Yeah, outbraked himself into turn one by quite some margin. So by the looks of it, we're probably not going to see Fernando at the top of the timesheets. I don't know if he's going to have enough tire life to cool down, recharge, and go once again, but he's definitely going for it, and that's for sure. Just going to reload the timing here for you guys as we get set to wrap up here on the day. Lando Norris, again, fresh set of tires. Okay, he is going for a push lap here. Personal best in the first sector. He is currently sitting in P8. Very smooth through turn 10, no issues there. DRS open at the exit of 11. He's got Ocon ahead of him, so he might be able to actually get a decent tow, but if Ocon's going fast enough, he should be okay through the high-speed sections of 12 and 13. And Norris jumps up into P5. Solid lap there from Lando Norris. Moves ahead of Lewis Hamilton in the Mercedes. Norris just completed his 39th lap of the session so far in the PM. 6/10 off of Max Verstappen's best time. So a good lap there from Lando Norris. More of a performance run there for McLaren. Again, keep in mind, we don't know fuel loads, engine ERS modes, anything like that. But a solid lap. I'd say a kind of a good recovery there for Lando and McLaren, considering how the session started. We're going to talk more about that in the debrief show. Fingers crossed that they don't have any significant or major issues with the brakes. It doesn't look like it because they've been able to do about 35, 36 laps of running now without any issue. So it looks like they might have resolved that. All right, we got the SF23 in the hands of Charles Leclerc, also on a performance run. So it doesn't look like we'll get to see any of the soft tires running on the first day, which is okay. That's normal and to be expected. But it doesn't mean that these guys could try and push just a little bit in there. And certainly I've just seen the chat comment here from Dealbrick saying, I love Alonso's mentality. Yeah, and I do too. It provides us with a lot of entertainment even on the first day of testing because he's pushing very, very hard. I'd like to see the onboard of his fastest lap because I think that you'll see just how hard he was pushing to get that lap time. So yeah, I love that he just goes for it and attacks it. And I think he really wanted that P1 for today. I wouldn't be surprised if he goes back to the pits, gets another set of tires, and just goes one more time. He's just that type of character. Oh, and we got a yellow flag. That was probably the first yellow flag that we've had in this PM session, if I remember correctly. At least since we've been live streaming. I don't know what the yellow flag is for. They said it's in Sector 2. And yeah, there we go. We got Alonso going out again. And if I have to predict, that's probably a fresh set of tires, or at least a gently used set of tires. Let's see if we can see. Oh, okay, he's got some Flovis paint on, so maybe not then. I did not actually not see the Flovis paint. On the right side of the car, it is mainly on... I mean, really, it's on the entire right side of the car, yeah. So they're really trying to test the airflow. So we're probably not going to see Alonso go for it on this lap, although I could be wrong. Still showing yellow flags in Sector 2. And we got a virtual safety car now deployed. I think that is going to be a test by the FIA because they did the same thing in the AM session. So I think that will probably be just from the FIA, I think. Let's close that. Well, that might be a decent queue. Or probably a pretty good time to slowly start to wrap up here. It's unfortunate for Alonso, though, because he just came out with a fresh coat of Flovis paint and won't be able to get the proper data that he needs at the moment. But this will probably be for a few minutes, and then they'll stop the virtual safety car. Yeah, I don't think that it's anything car. It's just the FIA doing normal test again. They're just showing how the Flovis paint is applied to the car. But in the meantime, before we go, let's hear from Pierre Gasly on his debut day for Alpine and see what he thinks of the new A523.
Hi guys, it's Pierre here. Yeah, just a quick sum up after my first morning in the car. I was super excited. I think it went really well. Managed to do most of the program. I know it was cool to be back driving after a long winter, and yeah, it was really good. I'm really happy. First feeling with it is very positive. So yeah, we just need to get to work. Ciao.
So that was Pierre Gasly's thoughts from the first day of testing. He was in the AM session, of course, and his teammate Esteban Ocon taking over for the PM session here. But Pierre Gasly finishing in the morning, and right now currently sitting 16th place. His teammate right behind him in 17th place. So we still got a virtual safety car underway at the moment. So guys, I'm going to wrap up the stream here shortly. That will be it for today's streams. Thank you very much for everybody who's joined, also in the AM session, but also in the PM session as well. We had a lot more people in the PM session, and I really do appreciate it. It really made the 2.5 hours or so fly by really quickly. I'm not done yet for F1 content for the day. After I go offline here, I'm going to be doing a quick debrief show of day one, just recapping the day's action, looking at the best lap times, the teams who completed the most amount of laps, and just some of the news around the pit lane about which team's looking good, which teams are a little bit on the back foot. That will be released in a few hours' time on our YouTube channel. If you haven't already, please subscribe to the channel, but also enable notifications. Make sure you click all, because then you'll get YouTube notifications sent straight to your phone, and you'll also see the videos pop up in the homepage of your YouTube channel. So, schedule for tomorrow, we're not gonna do an AM stream for for Friday morning, but the Backmarkers F1 show live streams will be back Friday, 3 p.m. Central European Time, 9 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. Be sure to join us then. All of that information is on the homepage of our channel, and if not, follow us on social media, Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook, and we'll be posting all of the links there. I really do have to say a big thank you. Appreciate everybody out there. I'm just going to maybe check just quickly to see if we have any more comments. Not much there. Dealbrick saying, have a great day. Appreciate it, man. You have a great day as well. Enjoy the rest of your Thursday. I know I've got a busy one ahead of me, but definitely wouldn't want it any other way with the return of Formula One, and wouldn't want it any other way watching and listening along with you guys. So thank you for everybody who joined today. We really do appreciate the support, and we'll be seeing you again really shortly as we join for the debrief show and for tomorrow's streams as well. Have a great day, everybody. We'll see you tomorrow.